Today, one of the other books that she wrote is called Radical Compassion. And this has a very specific practice that we've done before. And, I bring this up because, again, it's a multidisciplinary practice. It's a multidisciplinary practice. And it's got different steps in it. We're going to do the practice today. Okay. And in the preface, she writes, many years ago, I read a moving article by a hospice caregiver who had accompanied thousands of people during their final weeks. One phrase in particular has stayed with me. After countless hours listening to the thoughts of the dying, the caregiver summed up their greatest regret with these words: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. I started asking myself questions like, what does it mean to live true to yourself? What does it mean? What does it mean, right? That's a really good question to ask ourselves. And a lot of times maybe we don't, maybe there's values, morals, judgments, whatever it might be, from ourselves, from society, from our family. And she goes into sort of a feeling of failure. I know that feeling of failure intimately. For many years. The trance of unworthiness kept me feeling deficient as friend and daughter, partner and parent. I fueled doubt about my capability as a therapist and as a teacher. When I faced severe physical illness, it initially triggered self-blame. What did I do wrong to get sick? And maybe maybe you feel certain things when you get sick, or, I must not have made the right choice or something like that. Yet this very suffering, feeling deficient and disconnected, has also been my most fertile ground for waking up. It has led me to a spiritual path and practices that I cherish. And when I get stuck in painful emotions, it brings me to a repeating realization, an insight that has profoundly changed my life. I have to love myself into healing. The only path that can carry me home is the path of self-compassion. The path of self-compassion. So love yourself into healing. Right? If we don't accept ourselves for who we are, how can we love ourselves? And so that first part of accepting ourselves, despite everything, right, with the non-judgmental. In the last session we talked about tenderness, right, kindness, self-compassion, self-love. We've done things like meditation, loving kindness. Radical compassion means including the vulnerability of this life, all life, in our heart. It means having the courage to love ourselves, each other, and our world. Radical compassion is rooted in mindful, embodied presence, and it is expressed actively through caring that includes all beings. I thought that was pretty beautiful. And so the practice that she recommends to get to radical compassion is a practice called RAIN, and that's an acronym, RAIN. And in terms of, so this is a practice that you can do. This is a practice that you can do formally, or it's a practice that you can do informally. And the R stands for recognize. That's the first step, right? Just recognize what is going on. The R stands for recognize. Are you able to recognize? A lot of times, especially with some people I work, emotions get converted, fear, sadness, loneliness gets converted to stress, for instance. We're more, as a society, we're more okay with stress. Oh, I'm really stressed right now. It almost seems like a cool thing that you're like really stressed. It's like, sorry, I can't call you back. I'm really stressed right now. Right? It's like, oh, he's busy, right? It's like, oh, he must be really important. He's super, he's stressed. He's busy. He's got a lot of things to do, right? It's like, gee, that's not what I want. But we're okay. It's sort of like we're okay with stress, right? It's like our kids, it's like, I'm so stressed, leave me alone. It's like, okay, but if you say like, gee, I feel worthless. What do you do? What do you do with that? Right? How do you, and so what we do is oftentimes we mask emotions under this sort of cloud of stress. And a lot of times we don't even recognize the emotions we're having because there's so many layers on top of it that that it's almost like we're just trying to survive, and we're in such a sympathetically driven state that we can't even stop to recognize the emotions that we're having in the moment. And even that, right, when we talked about pausing, right, even just taking that initial pause from everything that's going on, that's the first step of sort of allowing this openness so that we can recognize. Okay. And so recognize is shifting our attention, right? It's allowing our awareness to perceive what is happening. Okay. And so based on the practice, recognizing means consciously acknowledging in any given moment the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are affecting you. This can be done with a simple mental whisper, noting what you are most aware of. Okay. That in of itself is a practice. That's it. In this moment, what are you recognizing that is going on for you right now? What emotion, what a thought, what sensation do you recognize? That's your practice. And you can see how you can do this both in your formal practice and in an informal practice, right? You can be walking down the street, maybe you're eating lunch and you're asking yourself, what do I notice right now? What do I recognize that's happening for me right now? Right? And just asking yourself, and there's a bit of a switch. What's happening? What's going on for me right now? The mental whisper is using your cognition, so activating your mind a little bit to whisper to yourself, what do you notice? Oh, I'm thinking a lot about the musical that's going to happen tonight. I hope my kids do well in it or whatever it might be. Okay. Interesting. Oh, now I'm noticing that, I'm recognizing that my right shoulder feels like there's some burning going on in my right shoulder. Okay. Right. And just as I stated that, as I recognized that, guess what happened? It shifted. Just in that. Okay. There is, even in just that recognition, right? This is why I'm taking so long on it, because that can be so powerful, and it's something that we don't often practice or do. There's a really famous adage in neuroscience. It's, name it to tame it, right? And that's that recognize part. Name it. What emotion are you noticing right now? Name the emotion, right? That name it to tame it is actually based on very good neuroscience research that looked at, as people were being scanned and showing images of quite distressing things. They were being scanned and they were seeing in real time areas of the brain that were activated when the images were being shown. And one of the major areas for emotional processing is the amygdala. And so they saw that the amygdala was firing quite hot, red. Right? When you see these studies, it's red, it's lit up. Right? We often say that part of the brain is lit up. Okay. And they were documenting, they were noticing what sort of effects were happening in the body, what the level of emotion, how much distress they were having. Okay. And then they took those same people and they put them under the scanner again. And they said, now what we want you to do is, as you notice the emotions that you're having, we want you to verbalize them out loud. Right? Verbalize them, express it. And in real time. Okay, so this is happening in real time. We know this is happening in real time. You're actually consciously doing something. The prefrontal cortex comes on board when we verbalize something. That connects with our amygdala. And guess what happened to in real time? Guess what happened to the activation of the amygdala? It decreased because you're bringing on an added part of the brain. You're bringing on a bit of that prefrontal cortex that can then communicate with the amygdala, that can say, hey, let's quiet it down a little bit. Okay. When our amygdala is firing, sometimes we don't, we've all been in those situations. You say, I blew my lid. Oftentimes you blow your lid because there's such an emotional distress that's occurring that we don't activate our prefrontal cortex, and we can't come from a higher order perspective. And so we blow our lid, we lose it. All right. And that's oftentimes the amygdala is so charged that we're responding from a very amateur area of our brain, and we're not bringing in the more evolved area of our brain, being our prefrontal cortex, to be able to respond to situations. So when we do lose our lid, you could say we're responding from an amygdala perspective, and we've all done it, right? But when we bring in that our other part of the brain, now there's communication. We like communication between different parts of the brain. There's integration. Right. And now we can actually respond to the situation, and our amygdala, the intensity of the firing of the amygdala actually decreases when we name it. So the adage is, name it to tame it. Name it to tame it. You do this with your kids. If you have kids, grandchildren, what do you notice? What's the emotion you're feeling? Nothing. I'm not feeling anything. Whoa. Whoa. Oh. Right. Okay. We do this with our kids. We try to, at least. And when they do name it, there's a dramatic shift that happens in their physiology, in their body, in their body language, in their mood, and everything. We have a 2-year-old, and her expressive ability is beyond belief. She comes in and she puts her hands on her hips. She goes, I'm frustrated. It's like, okay, what are you frustrated about? Right. I'm frustrated because, one of her brothers or sister won't play with her or something like that. And she names it. She's like incredible. She names it. She allows it. And I say, would you like a hug, or can I play with you? She goes, yes. Done. Right. Name it to tame it. Recognize. Notice. Right. A lot of different language that essentially means the same thing. Allow. The next one is, so the first one is R. The next one is A. Allow. Allow the experience to just be there. Allowing means letting the thoughts, emotions, feelings, or sensations you have recognized simply be there without trying to fix or avoid them. That's a big one, right? Because how quickly are we wanting to fix something that we don't want, or trying to avoid a thought that we're like, oh, that's a bad thought. I want to avoid that thought. Right. I investigate with interest and care. To investigate, call on your natural curiosity, the desire to know truth, and direct a more focused attention to your present experience. Inquire. Right? We've used a lot of these. Inward inquiry. Right? Are you inquiring with curiosity? How are you investigating? Gee, I noticed this emotion that's arising. Right? How, when you investigate it, be creative, right? If you were talking to a child and asking them about an emotion, right? How would we talk to the child? What do you notice? Right? Nothing. That's their first response. Nothing. Right? Or, I just don't want it, or something like that. Okay. Where do you feel it in your body? Right. All over. Okay. Now, can you take a deep breath? Where do you feel it now? I feel it in my belly. Okay. All right. Fun. Does it have a color? Black, right? Or whatever it is. Okay. What shape does it have? Does it have a shape? And then what do they do? Right? They go into that area and they're looking for a shape, right? Or they're investigating it. Does it have a shape? It's just globby. Okay, I like that. Globby, right? And so if you don't have right, this is also developing that technique for yourself. Right? What shape does it have? Can you put a border around it? Is it a discrete border, or is it kind of fuzzy? Does it move? Is it very stagnant? Is it fixed, or does it move a little bit? All right. If it was to play a note, what note would it be playing? And even just asking the question, it's just sort of like it's sort of like, what note would it be playing? Right. Like I don't know, like an E sharp, right? I don't even know what E sharp is, but any sharp note has got to be sharp, right? Apologize to any musicians out there, but so that's the inquiry, that's the investigation, that's that curiosity, like open curiosity. And then nurture. And this can be the hardest part, is that self-nurture, because oftentimes we don't really do self-nurture. Self-compassion begins to naturally arise in the moments that you recognize you are suffering. It comes into fullness as you intentionally nurture your inner life with self-care. Right? We'll do this practice. Okay. So this is rain. This was popularized by Tara Brach in her book, Radical Compassion. I highly recommend her. She's quite beautiful in terms of both. She's a psychologist, a spiritual leader. She's quite good. Has a lot of YouTubes. Is quite powerful, and has dealt with her own physical illnesses as well, and talks about them quite freely. Okay. So when we do this practice, again, what I ask you to do is I am going to ask you to recognize emotions. Okay. And just like any practice that we do, when we do the practice, what I ask you to do is, in the practice, find something, an emotion that you feel like you can tolerate in this moment. Okay. We don't need to bring up something that is a 10 out of 10 in emotional intensity at this time. But as you get better with the practice, you can bring up more intense emotions. Okay. But when we do the practice, when you're learning the practice, when you're doing it, start off with emotions that might arise that you feel like you can tolerate, right? That if from a scale of 0 to 10, it has a level of anywhere between, let's say, 2 to 6 or something like that. Okay. That's number one. Then it's, right, if at any point you feel like the emotion is getting too much, right, you are your own judge on this. If you feel like the emotion is getting too much, there's too much constriction, there's too much whatever it might be that's occurring, we go back to our resource. We go back to whatever it is that we have as our resource that we can direct our attention to. Okay, so even if we're recognizing and it starts to build in intensity and it gets too much, we simply go back to our resource. Okay. If your eyes are closed and it continues to get too much, we open our eyes. We reorient ourselves to our room, to our surroundings. We feel our feet on the ground. We feel our butt on the chair. We may even name the color of the paint on the walls. We may look at something that we recognize, a picture that we recognize, something like that. We may even touch or feel something that we feel comfortable with, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Okay, so let's begin by finding a comfortable posture. A posture that you feel relaxed yet alert. If you choose to close your eyes, gently closing your eyes. If not, inviting you to have a soft downward gaze, as if you were gazing off onto the horizon or across the ocean. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. And with each exhale, seeing if you can relax and settle into your body ever so slightly more. Feeling supported by the surface you're on. Allowing your body to get heavier and heavier with each breath. And if there are any areas of tension that you notice, simply bringing attention to that tension and seeing if you can relax it ever so slightly with your intention or breath, or adjusting your posture to help release the tension if possible. And then breathing regularly at whatever pace works for you. Taking a moment to feel yourself breathing. And starting out by bringing your attention to your resource, your anchor. A place that you can direct your attention to that feels safer. That regardless where your attention goes in this meditation, that you know you can always direct your attention to this place, this resource, this anchor. And now I invite you to begin the rain meditation and to scan or sense whatever might be going on in your life right now. And for this practice, bringing to mind a situation or circumstance that is difficult for you in this moment. Maybe bringing to mind a current situation in which you feel stuck. One that elicits a difficult reaction, such as anger, fear, hopelessness, or whatever comes up for you. And visualize whatever the situation is. If it involves another person, seeing that person in whatever setting you are in. Entering the experience, visualizing the scene, the situation. Maybe remembering the words that were spoken. And bringing to awareness the charged essence of this experience. And now begin with R, recognize. Recognize whatever is most predominant for you right now. What is happening for you in this moment? You may ask yourself, what is happening inside of me right now? What sensations are you most aware of? What emotions arise? Recognize what is here for you right now. You may choose to whisper certain words to yourself, whatever is more prominent for you. Becoming aware of this felt sense of this situation as a whole in your body, as a sensation that you can feel right now in the present moment. As you recognize what is present for you, see if your intention can be to allow. Allowing what is here for you right now with no resistance. You may whisper to yourself, "This belongs." Yes. Let it be. You might find yourself saying yes to a huge inner no, to a body and mind painfully contracted in resistance. You might be saying yes to the part of you that is saying, "I hate this." That is a totally natural part of this process. Recognizing what is here and true for you right now, and allowing it to be just as it is, with no judgment or resistance. And if you can allow, even for some moments, inviting yourself to begin to investigate. Open yourself up with a natural interest and curiosity. Investigate with gentleness, tenderness. You may notice where you feel this in your body. You may be aware of a color or shape that it is associated with. You may ask yourself, what am I believing? What am I anticipating? What about this most wants my attention? And see what arises for you. Whatever comes up, noticing what happens in your body as you investigate. What do you notice as a felt sense in your body? You may be aware of heat, coolness, tightness, pressure, achiness, a squeezing sensation, vibration, numbness, tingling. There may even be a very vague sense, and that is okay. Inviting whatever wants to come into your awareness to be felt in the body with awareness. You may also find it helpful to breathe. Breathe into that area of the body, breathing more deeply, directing your breath to that felt sense of the emotion in your body. As you continue to investigate, you may notice that you begin to recognize more. And as this may happen, returning to the R of rain, recognize, as well as the allow, and allow it to be there. Can we allow with a surrendering presence, with no resistance, continuing to investigate the felt sense in your body, and if this becomes too intense, notice that as well. Can you allow that intensity to be present? Or choosing to return to your breath, or your anchor, or your resource? As you investigate and contact this place in your body, what do you notice? Does it change in any way? Does it intensify? Does it soften? Or does it bring more tension and fear? Simply noticing what is here for you right now. And you may ask yourself, what do you need most right now? What does this place most need? May it be love, pure acceptance, forgiveness, to feel heard, to feel embraced. And then entering into the N of rain, nurture. As you sense what is needed, what is your natural response? Sensing that your heart can offer what's needed in this moment, as if your heart could touch that vulnerable place with some quality of presence, love, and compassion. If it's easier for you that the love and compassion come from another source, such as a loved one, a spiritual figure, a pet, nature, or some loving presence, just imagine and feel and sense that love pouring in. You might offer some wise words to yourself, such as, "I'm sorry," "I love you," "It's okay," "I'm here and I'm not leaving." You may even place your hand on your heart or your throat, or your eyes, or on your face, or any place that feels nurturing on your body, and use healing touch as a way to nurture yourself. Letting your intention be to let that vulnerable place feel loved. You may even imagine light, warmth, or a tender touch coming to that area. As you offer this unconditional love to yourself, see if you can become familiar with the quality of presence that is here, allowing yourself to open to that love, to that compassionate, tender presence, and seeing if you can rest in that awareness of unconditional love. And as we close this meditation for today, allowing this rain practice to inform your day, to see if you can recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture any triggering moments that may arise for you today. And see if you can rest in that nurturance of pure love, tenderness, and self-compassion. And now taking 2 or 3 deep breaths, feeling your feet on the ground, or whatever surface they're on. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed. Stretching if you feel like you need to stretch. And just taking a moment to reflect on your practice today.